Hello, welcome back to the last session of this Breakfast Club. This one's all about #United's YouTube documentary series, Breaking the Net, which, if you haven't seen already, is well worth seeing. It's really great. Just to give you a bit of background about it and about hashtag as well. #United Football Club was formed 5 years ago by YouTube influencer Spencer Owen, Spencer FC. And the team films and uploads its matches and related content to YouTube. And as a result, has very quickly built up a huge social media following. It has almost 500,000 Insta followers and over 500,000 YouTube subscribers, which is obviously enormous for a club of that scale. It recently released this 4-part documentary series, Breaking the Net, which was shot and edited and distributed entirely in lockdown. It charts the sort of trials and tribulations of lockdown and the way the club responded. And there's a really fascinating bit around the FA Cup run for the club as well, which, I won't give anything away, but it's really great. And it adds a really sort of thrilling dynamic to the documentary series. So I'm going to introduce, well, I won't introduce, but I'm going to say hello to Neil and Danny, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Actually, maybe, Neil, you could kick us off, please.
Well, hi, Jake. Thanks for that intro. So I'm Neil. I am a sports content producer. I started my career 20 years ago, Soccer AM at Sky. Did 8 years there, then moved into digital, where I've been mainly since 2007. I launched Copper 90 with my current boss, Spen. I've worked for the FA. I've done a lot of work for Formula E and Aurora, so the previous session was really interesting. Yeah. Worked a lot for brands in football, ran a fan network for Fremantle for a while, and I've been at hashtag for almost 3 years now. So, yeah.
Brilliant. You've got your little branding on there as well, on your cap.
Yeah, as I explained to you, that's more to do with lockdown hair and less to do with branding, I promise you.
You're just showing off because you've got hair. Danny, tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, not quite on brand, but hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm Danny. I've been a filmmaker most of my life, essentially. Went to uni, studied filmmaking, wanted to go into kind of the realm of movies, but quickly deterred away from that. And professionally, I'd say for the last 5 years, I've been working in the kind of niche football YouTube term, for want of a better word. Started off at Tifo Football, which was formerly known as Umaxit Football, back in their infancy. Worked there for a few years and then moved over to Copper 90, which was kind of a dream job for me. Got to spend 18 months there, met some incredible people. And then coming up to the end of last summer, I stumbled across a post by Neil on LinkedIn asking who wants to make this incredible documentary. Just put the feelers out, and yeah, he took a punt on me, I think, but it's gone all right so far, I think, maybe.
Brilliant. So did you know Neil before then, from Copper 90?
No, I never met Neil, but the ties there with Copper, obviously. I think he knew some people there still, and that kind of helped get the conversation going and kind of linking over there. So that was quite helpful from that end.
Fantastic. Before we start the questions about the documentary, it makes sense to see a bit of it. So we've got a trailer we can show now. I might just mute my camera and video while watching this. And yeah, we'll catch up after.
All forms of football have been suspended.
There's a lot of work to be done there.
We just got some very bad news on WhatsApp.
It is not easy playing for this football club because everyone wants to shoot you down.
We're going to turn some heads and make people realise we're a proper club. Hello, mate.
This is trickier.
You can just let me know how many people laugh you out the room.
This is what the future of non-league needs.
Don't put that in the edit.
That will make it into the documentary.
This club's going to give me a heart attack.
Jesse Wallace is thinking about shot it.
R.I.P. headphone users. We will remember you.
Everyone knows about the magic of the FA Cup. Anyone can beat anyone, and dreams can come true. And my dreams already came true with this club years and years ago. But for anyone that thinks we can't win this game or the next game or go that one round further, I just tell them to look at what we've already done and say, count us out at your peril.
Oh my God!
The biggest roller coaster of emotion I've ever been through.
Lovely stuff. Right, Neil, can you start off by telling us a bit of background to this film series? Was this something you'd already planned kind of pre-pandemic? That's question one of this. How did you go about financing it? Because it does have high editorial value. So, it looks great. And it's really, there's lots going on, but it looks like there's a big team involved. I'm not going to spoil anything at the moment. The bottom up. And was the plan always to distribute on YouTube, as the same as all the rest of the hashtags, Insta, obviously?
Yeah. Okay. So to answer the question of was it always planned? Yes. In fact, we wanted to do it almost 3 years ago when I joined, when we moved into non-league from the exhibition world. We had a few conversations with industry people. We were looking for partners, distribution, production partners, and through nobody's fault, it just didn't happen. And I think one thing we've learned over the years is we get things done when we put matters in our own hands. So when we had the problems last year with the season being voided, when we expanded the club, we brought a women's team in, we brought a youth club in, we knew that the time was right to tell a different story. And we just put it in our own hands and financed it ourselves.
Right.
So yes, YouTube was always going to be the platform for distribution because that's where our core audience is. And after all, this was made for the core audience as a primary focus. In terms of financing, well, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm proud of what we've done. But considering the room's full of industry people, I think we can all see the gaps and the cracks, and this is not doing down Danny's work to any extent. It's essentially mostly one man's work, and that's the guy in the window over there. So really, in terms of a budget, it was Danny's salary, and I think it's paid off.
Amazing. Danny, how did you first sort of decide how to approach this? Because everything's kind of been left to you, presumably to shoot and edit and direct, and
it was a kind of an unknown entity for me. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this. I think it's the first time anyone's ever done anything like this, to be honest, in this kind of space and the span of it for kind of one person. There was the team is there, the core team, and they all helped. So I don't want to just take, it was just me, like without Neil and all that being there. But from my perspective, it was kind of there wasn't anything I could really draw experience on. I don't think there was anything I could take too much inspiration from. I didn't go into it having any real ideas in terms of, let's watch all these documentaries for inspiration, because I didn't really want to look at, let's say, a Sunderland Till I Die that had a production crew of 100 people and go, right, I want to emulate that, when let's be realistic, it's just me. So let's just go into it with a blank slate in my head, talk to Neil, figure out the story, and just go from there. And it was just kind of, I feel like we just went with it and figured it out as we went along, which is kind of, I think, maybe the best way to do it.
And I think that what's important to say at this point is that we know, or I know, that when we tell the story of a regular season, the narrative is quite one-dimensional, because we're telling that story from match day to match day to match day.
Yeah.
And as such, you don't really get massive amount of insight from the characters around the club, because even at our level, people are focused on the game, right? And it's all very real time. So we wanted to tell the story of what is still quite a unique club in terms of personnel and structure in a different way. So I was pretty convinced that the audience would want it. And in fact, we polled them this time last year and said, what do you want to watch? And what Barry said before was really interesting, because our audience are all about esports and gamification and, whizzy graphics and influencers. But ultimately, apart from live games, this sort of content was what they said they wanted to watch. So we knew we were onto a winner to a certain extent.
Down to things like the Sunderland doc and the Leeds doc and Tottenham and all that kind of stuff. So You know,
definitely. Our audience is predominantly young, predominantly male, and yes, they are consuming content, on TikTok and multiple platforms. But if you get the narrative right, they're watching 1 hour docs. Everybody's talking about the all or nothing docs, right?
Yeah.
I think our job and Danny's job was just to make sure we weren't trying to emulate that, because not only do we not have the resource of one of those big budget docs, but we also don't really have the choice of shots, right?
Yeah.
Non-league football looks very different to Premier League football in terms of the shots of the crowd, in terms of the actual action. So we had to tell the story in quite a different way.
And rewinding back to March, when you said you polled your sort of fan base and they said actually a doc about hashtag would be great to see. You obviously then thought, well, a bit of background about hashtag, how it's set up and all that kind of stuff. We'll have the women's team maybe to talk about. What was your thinking at the time would be your kind of key sort of narrative arcs, I suppose, throughout the doc?
So here's where we had to pivot. In the original idea was to run the documentary monthly over the whole season.
Right.
And I knew that over that season we could dip into our backstory. So for the new fans, we could tell that story in a new way. We could dip into elements of the club that were perhaps less known, the women, the kids, the esports side. That was the intention, and obviously highlighting characters throughout the club. But that's when COVID kind of squeezed it, because they squeezed the amount of time which we had to tell the story. So that's when we really had to pivot.
Right. Okay. I don't know if sounds like my computer's about to take off, but I don't know if anyone else is hearing that. Hopefully not. So
all good. Yeah, all good for me.
Right. Okay. That's good. It's good. So the FA Cup bit is, I would say, having seen all 4 series, that is the bit that's your kind of USP, I think, for this series. Aside from the kind of the footage, as you say, is very different to what you would get in a Premier League style, content, and that adds to it as well. It's all gritty and it's interesting and it's really, it's very buzzy. The whole thing's really buzzy. But the FA Cup run is just, again, one of those things you couldn't really script. So, Danny, when you started filming and then you were kind of getting all this content together, were you aware at that point that actually this FA Cup thing could become like the big bit of this series?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been silly for me not to think, as we're watching these incredible games go on, that this wouldn't be like an important narrative. I think one thing for me I've always tried to stick to whenever I've come into anything that revolves around telling a story around a club or football matches as well is not letting the results dictate what we want to do. Like if you go into even if it's just a vlog around a match day, if you're waiting for a good game and it doesn't come, the video is just not going to be very good. So we got super lucky, for sure, with the cup run, no doubt about it. But I'm still confident that even if that hadn't happened, that something else would have happened, because it could have got knocked out straight away, and then you have to deal with the fallout of that. And we will then bring in different narratives and stories to fit around that narrative. So I don't think it was necessarily a saving grace in the respect of without it would have fallen flat. But for sure, people, I don't want to give anything away, but it's the most incredible FA Cup thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm not even trying to say that to sell it. When you're there on the day, you're just sat there with the camera for, I'm not going to say anything because I want people to watch it, but it was, I knew it was going to fill up a lot of it. And I'm glad it happened, to be honest, because it did bring a bit of that Premier League element that Neil says that we won't have at non-league. We got a touch of it during that kind of COVID kind of period where fans were coming back, but we're still limited. We were still able to get a few nice bits like that. So for sure. Yeah,
it was definitely a catalyst for those early episodes. But I think what we wanted to do with the cup run, considering we'd already really told that story in our normal videos, we used it as a way to kind of highlight an element of our backstory, which is that our roots are in YouTube. So when we had a game shown on BBC Sport Live, which was incredible for us, it was important to counterpoint with that with where we came from. So we invited some of our friends from YouTube, and we talked to them during the cup run. And I think that strand ran through the narrative of the cup run.
Yeah, because you get a lot of the same faces in each of the games, and then you're kind of catching up with the excitement from those guys when they're seeing it all, unfold in front of them. And it's they become almost part of the film as well as the players, don't they?
Yeah, and that's what we wanted to do. It's just a shame we had to compress it. We wanted to pick out the characters surrounding the club, whether it's fans or volunteers or staff or players. It's just that's an element we couldn't really do as well as we wanted to with only 4 episodes. We didn't really dip into many of the players. So there are many stories we can tell and will tell in Series 2. Yeah,
actually, I suppose the player that you most dipped into is, I've forgotten her name, the lady that was kind of the captain of the women's team, and then obviously what happened to her again, which probably a spoiler if I talk too much more about it, but again, that's a really interesting story, and how she kind of responded to that, how the club responded to that, and again, it's really sort of heartwarming. It's a really nice part of the documentary as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to tell the human story, and that's something, as I say, we don't really get a chance to do when we edit our match day videos. And having said we're a unique club, the kind of narratives, the kind of stories, the kind of people that we have at our club are replicated at pretty much every non-league club around the country. So I think we wanted to shed a little bit of light on the kind of people that make these clubs tick, I guess.
Yeah, there's also a lot of references to, I suppose, some of the haters as well, of hashtag, which is interesting too, and being quite open and honest about that. And even the name as well gets a bit of a, Spencer gets a bit of a dig at for that too. And actually you get a lot of Spencer inside his house, very sort of open about, having the baby and sort of, preparing for all that. So you kind of, it's a bit personality driven around, him and you to some degree as well, Neil. You're in it quite a bit as well, aren't you? So were you comfortable with all of that aspect as well?
In terms of myself, I've done a bit before in my soccer days, but that's a long time ago. I've tried to stay away from the front of camera for hashtag for various reasons. It's not really about me, but I was happy to help with this. And in terms of Spencer, look, he's still the most attractive element of our football club. He's a presenter, he's an influencer, he loves football, he loves esports. So it made sense to make him a central focus because that is really what makes us unique. But again, it was not about just the game, and it was not about just spend. We tried to blend them. I think Danny did a great job of doing that.
Yeah. So Danny, can you talk a little bit about the kit you used as well, the camera, and then we can talk a little bit about the editing as well, because I think you did all of that too, and kind of where that sort of sat within the workflow, when you started doing that, how you built that kind of narrative up.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, when I came into the club, I started in August, just before the cup run started. So Neil can probably speak a bit more on that, but Blackmagic kind of support hashtag. So through that, they have some camera gear from Blackmagic. So I've never used any gear like that before. Quite basic level, to be honest. I was more of an editor than a shooter. So I come in, we had the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro 4K. We had a couple of them and also one of the pocket cameras. But we focused on using the Ursa Minis for the documentary. For someone that's not used that many cameras before, it looks overwhelming, but within 5 minutes I picked it up and it was straight to use. It's kind of the perfect camera, I think, for what we're doing. It's just about the right blend between being nimble enough, because I was just the only shooter. I had to kind of try and cover 4 different angles all at once on game days, and so it was nimble enough for me to move about. I didn't really have time to put it on a tripod or a steady cam rig or anything like that. So it was good for me to move about, do all that, but also not too big and too kind of clunky that I couldn't do that. And yeah, the picture quality on that camera as well is phenomenal, as you'll see on the dock itself. I don't even think we got to use its full capability. You can shoot, we shot in just ProRes, you can shoot in RAW on those cameras as well, but just due to the pure amount of space needed and resource needed to kind of keep all that all together, and just not plausible for us right now, but there's even more you can do there. So camera gear wise, that was just the setup. It was pretty basic. If you saw me, really, it would just be that camera had a floppy little top mic on that didn't look the best, but it picked up the sound great. Radio mics for the interviews, and that's about it. And then, yeah, in terms of the editing, just did everything on Adobe Premiere Pro. I think ideally, as Neil stated, we wanted to try and release monthly when we first started this. So I started getting into a habit straight away. Every time we shoot, I drop the footage into Premiere Pro, make my select, so then I could dive in and start cutting up the episode as we go along. That quickly became apparent that, well, I can't really remember. It's been such a whirlwind, but for some reason it got all out of hand a little bit. I think we were starting to get a bit of momentum towards releasing that first episode after about a month and a half of editing it, and then the November lockdown hit. So we kind of paused on the release to see what would happen. And then before we knew it, kind of time had gone by, and we were sitting on like this first episode for quite a while, trying to rejig lots of little things to make it work, getting like the introduction correct, like the intro graphics and all that. And then before we knew it, we're hitting the new year, and lockdown is looking like it's set for a while. So we said, right, let's turn around the other 3 episodes in the next 3 weeks. So kind of just had to go full ham then and do that, which was, yeah, I've had a month off basically. So it's been nice to say that.
So we've got probably around up to 10 minutes left. So if you want to put any questions to Neil or Danny on exactly what they did for breaking the net, how they managed to sort of cope with lockdown restrictions, which I'm going to ask a little bit about now, or anything else you want to know about hashtag, then get them through now. Danny, so those you said you had like 3 to 4 weeks literally to go from kind of essentially one episode that you thought would go out in November to do these kind of 4 episodes which kind of tell at least part 1 of the whole story. So how did you decide kind of what to focus on in the edit? Was it all sort of, slotting into place? Did you have kind of all mapped out, or was it more, let's just see what works and see what pieces together?
Yeah, I mean, so the first episode was, the reason that took, I think, quite a long time was because it was basically everything that was shot before I had arrived. And so a lot of it was me trying to figure out how to put that together in a narrative that worked.
Yeah.
But I think the great thing of having me doing this solely as a shooter and an editor was, as I was shooting this and as I was picking up the interviews around it, it was all coming together in my head anyway. So by the time I got to episode 2, it really was a case of just, right, I know exactly what I'm doing, just clicking the buttons and making it work. And by the time I got to episode 4, I think I quite literally turned around episode 4 in the space of about 4 days, because it was a case of just, I know exactly how it's playing in my head.
Yeah.
I just need to get it done, cut it up. There was a bit more to it than just that, but essentially that workflow of doing it, I think if you had a shooter separately to the editor, then there's so much time between that to kind of figure out what we've got. And I have a way of, if I've, spent a whole day shooting on something, I'll just remember the shots that are good and be able to just then put that in the edit straight away. So I think that was key to being able to turn it around so quickly.
Do you have much on the cutting room floor at the moment?
We have some stuff, yeah. Therell be some stuff that we can definitely introduce for Series 2. I think at the end of season, episode 4, we had a little teaser of some stuff that we haven't used yet.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always plenty of footage that you just can't really use from game days and stuff. But I think we got all the good bits for the majority of it anyway. And
Neil, obviously the original idea was to do these monthly episodes, and for lockdown reasons and the fact that the football season was paused, that stopped. What are your plans now? Because you're kind of considering this 4 episodes as kind of part 1 of some sort of ongoing documentary thing. So do you know yet what your plans are to sort of pick up this again?
Yeah, things aren't 100% clear in terms of football season. As it stands, the season's done. We may or may not get promoted. It's a long story. And the new season will start pre-season in June, and we'll take it from there. As far as we're concerned with the doc, we will probably pick up again in June, and we'll start, whether we call it Series 2 or not, from there. And hopefully we then get a full year's run at the next series, and we can do what we aim to do with this. Between now and then, we're going to start ramping up kind of organic content again. We can officially meet and play football again from next week, which is fantastic. Because the guys haven't met for the last 3 months. So we'll be creating some of our own content. we've got a new Academy series, which Danny's helping me on, which is our new, well, it's not our new, it's the new series of our talent search.
All right.
So hopefully that'll add an extra string to our kind of formats over the next couple of months. And then, yeah, series 2, hopefully from pre-season onwards. Right.
Okay. And Danny, I should ask as well, with it being lockdown and all the kind of social distancing required and all that, how did that impact on your shooting?
I mean, the precautions in place at the games made it fairly easy. Everybody was, fan-wise, we were limited to a capacity, I think 300 at our home games.
Right.
So the fans were always spread out and in their place. So it was quite easy for me to roam around the games, quite spacious enough for me to be able to do that safely. So in terms of filming at kind of the games and stuff, it was absolutely fine. I think it just became a bit of an issue towards when things started getting worse again around Christmas, when we wanted to maybe bring in some more character profiles or these things. And it was just kind of really hard, or in some cases impossible, to just film with people. I mean, for the second episode, we introduced Jacko, one of the OGs, and it was a case of just having to film him at his office, because that was really the only time and space we could do it at. And even though it was a really cool insight to see him in that world, and that was great, it would have been great to maybe also do a bit more with him somewhere else or something like that. So in terms of shooting restrictions, it was manageable, but for sure, I mean, that FA Cup run, going back to it, if there were no restrictions on fans or whatever, I'm sure there would have been thousands there, quite literally, and that probably would have made it a lot harder for me. So in a weird way, it was kind of nice.
Yeah, it would have made it more difficult to do those one-to-one interviews with the fans that were there, wouldn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah, yeah. And I kind of, to be fair, that worked really well. So maybe it's a
blessing in disguise.
Yeah, blessing in disguise, exactly. Neil, how's it gone down? As you said that a year ago people were asking, can you do a documentary series? Have you had much feedback from? I mean, presumably there must be loads of comments underneath.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear what Barry was saying in the previous session about return on investment and KPI. For us, we don't have to obsess about views. Luckily, we're trying to build a brand with longevity. So it's not about immediate views. For me, this is more about qualitative feedback. So what the audience thought of it. Almost, to a man, to a woman, it's been positive from our core audience, which is fantastic. They want more. They don't quite understand why we can't give them more right now, but they will get it in time. I think it's not really a lesson I've learned, but it hasn't perhaps performed as well as I wanted it to on YouTube in terms of attracting a new audience.
Okay.
For whatever reason, and anyone who works on YouTube knows that the algorithm's a strange world, right? So I think it was a success, but I'd like to find a wider new audience for it. So I'm talking to partners about possibly distributing it in the States, whether on Facebook or what have you, because I think it's a story that particularly American fans would love.
Yeah, it's very different, isn't it, to the sort of thing that I'm sure that goes on. You see, what's that amazing series, the college, junior college American football series, where you get to see what goes on there. I forgot what it's called now, but even at that scale, these stadiums are massive, and there just isn't this type of. I think they'd find it absolutely fascinating. Yeah,
and I also think, having worked in football for a while, I know that over here there's still a resistance amongst core football fans to anything new. I mean, you mentioned our name and what have you earlier, but to a certain extent, doing what we do, which is starting from scratch, there's a resistance amongst a certain audience over here. But I think American soccer fans are slightly less resistant to new ideas. So I'm excited to take it there and see what happens.
Have you had any luck so far in sort of finding a way of distributing it?
I'm getting there. We're talking to various people. But we're such a small team, right? It's really hard to do distribution as well as planning for next season, but we'll find a way.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, is there anything else either of you want to add that we haven't already covered? Because that's a fascinating overview of how it was done, why it was done, and then the outcome as well.
Not from me, no, not at all. I feel like Neil's much better at this sort of thing than me. I'm just trying not to make any slip-ups.
No, nonsense. No, it's been great to talk about it. And as I said 5 minutes ago, the fact that we're all going to get together, staff and players, and start filming and playing football again in the next few weeks is so important.
Yeah.
We do put our audience first, but ultimately we're a football club with real human beings at the centre of it, and like anyone, we've struggled over the last year. So I'm excited to get started again.
And when will you hear about the promotion and how that's going to happen?
Not sure, to be honest. It's not going to be a footballing decision now. It won't be done on results. Again, I won't bore you with the details, but the FA are planning a restructuring, both in the men's and women's game. I think we're in a good position in terms of on-field performance and in terms of infrastructure at the club to apply for promotion. But if it happens, great, because the players deserve it. If it doesn't happen, as the players say, we go again, and we'll do it next year.
We'll see it all in the next series of Breaking the Net as well, no doubt. And I must say, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, do go and watch it. It's 4 episodes that well worth your time. It's really great. Thanks very much. Lovely to see you both, and good luck with what pans out in the rest of this season, and with the next load of episodes of the documentary as well.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Take care.